Welcome to Sachs Realty's Tuesday Night Podcast, where we talk about anything and everything real estate. Each week, we deliver expert information enabling you to make better informed decisions while keeping more money in your pocket. If you're interested in real estate, this is your show. Welcome, guys, to our Tuesday Night Podcast. We are live as usual. Happy holiday season to everybody. And if you're on the East Coast, at least here in Maryland, we are dealing with some cold temperatures.
Chilly.
It's going to be 20 degrees tonight. Wouldn't be so bad if the wind wasn't whipping.
Yeah, a little brisk.
Brisk.
Yes.
We have some guests here tonight from the west, out on the west side of town, Texas and Arizona. We'll, see what their weather forecasts are. But guys, can you believe what is going on? I mean, every time I open up my computer and I look in my emails and I go through the internet, I see these articles that, where people are saying the housing market is okay. It's streaming right along, that things are going to be great, that 24 is going to be a great year. And then you get the opposite side where they say, well, home prices may soften up 4% in 2024. And we hear that the Fed's going to drop rates. Then we hear that the Fed's going to be higher for longer. And, and then the biggest thing now that I'm hearing, and especially from a lot of the loan officers that are out there, people writing mortgages, residential mortgages, they're saying, hey, guys, if you have any buyers that are waiting, rates have really plummeted in the last 2 weeks. And then you look at it, and it's still averaging about 8%, depending on whether you have, 850 credit score, or whatever the top is, 9,000 credit, whatever, whatever they come up with the FICO score today as being the best, most stellar credit, if you have 20% down or if you pay points. So that's a big thing too. When will the Fed drop interest rates? Who knows? But we're going to go over some real facts tonight here, and we're dealing with boots on the ground guys, agents that are helping buyers and sellers. They're part of our preferred agent network as well. So, Melissa.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Tuesday night. And Todd, you are absolutely correct. We are so fortunate to have Ryan and Chris with us this evening. I'm going to start with you, Chris Pesek from the Austin, Texas area. Say what's going on in your neck of the woods. What are you seeing?
Man, when I look at everything that Todd's talking about, and you see it from this national perspective, and then take a look at what's happening in Austin. So we're seeing a little bit of the softening, but it's happening kind of on the outlying areas. But I guess it's like anywhere else. If you start with the city center and somewhere as popular as Austin is right now, with Tesla and Samsung and all the things that are going on here, SpaceX, Boring Company, Austin proper and the suburbs right around those are still holding pretty solid. But when you get out into some of the outlying areas, those concentric circles out, we're seeing some value drops, things sitting on the market a little while longer than they were a couple of years ago. So that's kind of what I'm seeing.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and really appreciate your time spending the next 2 hours with us. Yeah. So Ryan Meeks coming in from the Phoenix, Arizona area. How are you doing this evening?
Woo. Doing good, hanging in there. So thanks for having me. The weather here, it's like 65 degrees right now. I don't know. It's pretty rough, but I won't rub that in too much to you guys there on the East Coast. So, but yeah, it's what I'm seeing here. I work with a lot of buyers mainly, and it's really with what's happened with interest rates. We're seeing just buying power obviously being diminished. So a lot of my higher buyers. I mean, if you're looking at I'm fortunate enough to have some big buyers at like $2 million. They've had to go down to like 1.5 and 1. Talk about first world problems, I know. But that's really happening, across the board. And, I think in Chris's market as well, you have a lot of new builds out there in Austin, Texas. I mean, so we're seeing some builders offer some really, pretty strong, pretty competitive deals, if you go with their lenders and whatnot. So, the thing you worry about in Phoenix, I'm not sure if it's going on in the Austin, Texas area, is just, quality of build. Luckily, we've seen some supply chain issues that have gotten a little bit better since, the whole COVID era and things like that. So, we can market new builds a little bit more and feel a little bit more safe about that. But for the most part, we've come into a balanced market. We were in a seller's market. Now we're back into a balanced market, and a balanced market for us feels like a buyer's market. So that's what buyers are thinking, and then sellers are still trying to get as much as they can. So you're seeing a lot of price decreases in listing prices here. So for instance, we have one client we're working with now. They're around looking at a house started at 1.6. Now it's down to 1.3. It's probably worth 1.1. So sellers are still out there trying to get as much as they can, like sellers were doing a couple years ago. So it's you're seeing a lot of that still here in Arizona.
Well, I want to take a look at your markets, and then we're going to go over our market here. But the biggest thing is that we've seen a huge slowdown locally, and talking with people throughout the country, I think that it's fair to say that the recession has finally showed up. And I don't know if they'll call it a recession this time or not, but it seems that really since about mid-October, things have really dried up, and contractors around here are looking for work. I was talking with,
Wow.
A lot of times I gauge a friend of mine that has a sort of a manufacturing business and supply business. He's in the fencing industry. And I always look at his business as sort of like a gauge, because, people in good times and bad times, having a fence business is almost like having a liquor store, because you're going to drink when you're happy, you're going to drink when you're miserable. But you're drinking, right? So, it's either something to be in sorrow about or something to be excited about. So I look at a fencing business the same way, because, they say that fences make great neighbors. And so not just talking about residential, but commercial as well, it's security. And so when I go to him, and I always try and gauge, my contractor realm, my buddies, my supplier buddies, with asking my fence manufacturer and supplier what's happening, because he's both on the install, the residential, and wholesale side. And he said it's crickets. They have zero work. The first time, and actually when I spoke to him yesterday, he said to me, we knew it was coming. So we're not surprised. He has a couple partners, and they just had a partner meeting, and he said, you know what, we've been waiting for it. We've been waiting for it to show up. Everybody's been talking about it coming, and boom, it's here. And the biggest thing is the amount of inventory that a lot of these suppliers are sitting on right now and that are holding. And what a lot of people don't understand is most of these companies don't have the profit to bankroll it. So they're financing through credit lines and things like that, and they're starting to see their credit lines shrinking. I also heard a very interesting podcast with Danielle DiMartino Booth, who has been on our channel. I have a lot of respect for her. She worked for Fisher when he was the president of the Dallas Fed. She was with him as an advisor to Fisher during the great financial crisis. And I just watched an interesting podcast. You guys can find it. It's a very interesting watch, because listening to, when you think about what's happening in the market, the real root of it all is to look at chemical sales, because in all manufacturing, they need chemicals. So they're seeing a massive dry up in chemical sales, because that's the products that go into the manufacturing of goods. A lot of these products, and the trucking. That's the other metric. And you can look at it. We're in the height of the holiday season, and we're looking now at trucking is really down. And a lot of truckers are getting laid off. I mean, we had a caller, I think it was last week or the week before, that came on and said that he is working for a trucking company. I mean, he can't even afford to buy a house. And there, not too long ago during the pandemic, we saw everybody needing drivers and trucks, and they were getting a premium. So I think it's finally starting to happen. But I do want to go and let you guys talk about each one of your markets. We'll start in Austin, Chris. I just want to pull up this Altos Research. I kind of look to them a little bit for their data. I'm not plugging them. I don't get paid by them, but I think it's very interesting that we can look at this, and on the right-hand column, just looking at the Austin, Texas market, you can see in this right column what's kind of happening. And these, the left side's August, and the right side is now, today. And we can see, which is interesting, I look at from a builder, contractor, kind of background. I'm always looking at, what are the costs per square foot? And I know the appraisers don't go by this so much, but they're always looking at, that's how I gauge things on, because you can look at a house depending on what size it is and, what the age of the home and things like that. But I'm always looking at, can I buy a house for cheaper than I can build a house? And that's really what I'm comparing when I'm looking at the housing market to existing and new home sales. But it looks like the price per square footage is kind of holding its own. But your inventory, interestingly enough, has gone down, Chris. I mean, where we're looking at, most of the country has gone up. What can you say about the inventory here in Austin?
Well, I mean, and this goes back, Todd, to me. Austin's a different animal. One of the analysts that I follow in the area is Mark Sprague, and I just had breakfast with him 2 weeks ago. And the number that he brought out was we still have a net of 160 people moving to Austin daily. Okay, so we still have a need in Austin for housing. Now, that's not driving anything, because you can see the rest of the numbers are a little bit counterintuitive to that. But when people are moving to Austin, I've seen reports about kind of an exodus of people leaving Austin, going to Dallas, going back to California and stuff like that. I'm not personally seeing that on the ground. It's anecdotal, data's data, and I'm just one person. But I think a lot of that inventory being down is just people that have had their houses on the market, have pulled them out, haven't relisted. You've got relists are 7% of the market here. They're just like, I'm just going to wait this out. I'm good where I am. I don't necessarily need to move school districts. I don't necessarily need to downsize right now. Again, like you mentioned beforehand, the asset is in the 3% interest rate. It's not necessarily the house. So I think a lot of people are just staying put right now, knowing that, or feeling strongly that the Austin market, is going to rebound because of all the people that are continuing to come in.
What is happening when I look at days on the market? That's a real shock to me, having 102 days on the market, and really looking at August not that long ago, and it was still down. I mean, let's face it. We saw the peak last year, really in May and June of 22. So we're really still comparing a down market with a down market. I mean, buyer demand in August was not that much greater than it is right now, but we are seeing another 20 days on the market, 20%, increase, more than 20% increase in days on the market. But yet, we're not seeing, huge dips in median prices or square foot prices. The ones that are on the market right now, I mean, what's that inventory like? I mean, is this distressed, or is it just sellers, that just don't care and they're going to leave it on the market until they get what they're looking for?
It's a little bit of all of the above. We don't have a lot of distressed inventory. We haven't had I'm thinking back to maybe 2012, 2013, the last time I saw a reasonable amount of it. So we don't have a lot of distressed. I think there's a couple of things that are going into play. One, again, if you look at the demographic that could potentially be selling, all right, don't necessarily have to sell. I can wait it out. And Ryan had mentioned it earlier about, in Phoenix, the sellers still have a little bit of a mentality of the last couple of years. They want to squeeze every last dime they can out of it. So they're willing to go longer on market. But one of the other things is he also nailed was we've got a lot of new home inventory, and a lot of our builders in our MLS will put that house on the market when it's 2, 3, 4, 5 months out. So we've always had a little bit of an artificially inflated days on market as a result of how the builders market their properties. So I think you're just seeing a little bit of mix on everything.
And then when you look at your median rent, and we'll jump over to Arizona here, but when you look at median rents, I mean, boy, they've really kind of tanked. I mean, we're talking about $250 drop in median rent price from August to today. I mean, are you seeing an increase in, housing, as far as single family rentals hit the market?
No, but what it is, we had, and again, this goes back to Mark Sprague. We have had a record number of doors, multifamily doors, hit the market in 2023. So the delivery in the last 14 to 16 months of multifamily doors is way higher than it has been historically. And I mean, again, it's a record. But he did mention that next year, 2024, 2023, we also had a record low number of starts for multifamily doors, and that's going to continue into 2024. He said these numbers are dropping, but they're probably going to rebound a little bit next year, as we get more people in and the number of doors stays fairly similar. But then in 2025, potentially that number going up as more multifamily companies are coming in and trying to put more doors on the ground. So again, there's a few different things going on that are affecting that right now. But anecdotally, I'm not seeing single family rents drop very much, especially not $250 in a quarter. But multifamily, I think, is a large driver of this because we've had so many doors come online in the last 14 to 16 months.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Let's cruise on over to Gilbert, Arizona, and check that out. So I know it's right outside of Phoenix, and what can you tell us about your market here? I mean, if I'm looking at this, when we looked at Austin, Texas, it seemed to be more of a buyer's market than what we're seeing in Gilbert, Arizona, and I'm kind of surprised at that because I don't know, man. I figured that Arizona would be crashing hard right now.
Well, you would think so, but there's, just like Austin, we've got a lot of employers coming here, a lot of opportunity, a lot of people escaping from, where they don't want to be, moving here, working remotely, things like that. So still do see a lot of that. A lot of my clients are, most of my clients are primarily relocations. So we're seeing people, selling off their homes and then moving here. So very, very similar to the Austin market, I'm sure. What's interesting about Gilbert and when you look at the Phoenix metro area, these are huge areas. So Gilbert, Arizona, I think it's like, as far as the size of it, let me double check what it is exactly, but it is, it's a big place. I think it's like 68 square miles. So, 280,000 people here, and each one of these markets. So you go to Gilbert, you go to Chandler, Fountain Hills, very strong markets. Glendale's still a hot market, seller's market as well. Phoenix, but then, when you go on some of these outskirts, you're seeing things change as you get further away from Phoenix. So that's really what's going on. But yeah, I mean, median price of homes is still hovering around 650,000 for Gilbert itself, which is just absolutely crazy. What
do people make that are living in Gilbert, Arizona? What would you say the median income would be?
I think the median income for Gilbert, there was just like headlines about it that it surpassed Scottsdale for the highest median family income. I think it's like $120,000.
So it's still trading at over 5 times income.
Yeah,
houses.
Yeah, right. So in the Phoenix market, if you look at Phoenix, from a macro level, just all of the Phoenix, including the suburbs, you need about $93,000 household income to afford, the median household price here. So at a 20%, down payment. So,
again, I look at the square foot pricing. I mean, 283. Now we're 288. I mean, that tells me, the square foot price is holding its own. What, and that really has nothing to do with what somebody wants for a house. So when we're looking at median list price and we're looking at the prices that are declining, I'm again looking at price per square foot on average, and that's how I really, see what's happening in that sector. I saw one of your videos, Ryan, where you talked about people. I know you have a lot of people moving to your area, domestic migration, but you also talk about a lot of people moving out, they're beating feet out of Arizona. What's the deal? And is it the traffic congestion? I mean, why are people leaving Gilbert, Phoenix?
what we find here is that people will move here, and it kind of seems almost like a stop off between two different places. So they'll move here, and then they'll continue their journey. And I see that as a family man. I see families that move in, and then a year or two later, they're gone. They're moving somewhere else to be closer to family. And I think it's funny here in Arizona. It's like we just joke about how we outnumber the natives, right? I'm from actually suburb of Chicago. And it's rare that you actually find a native here. So I feel what happens is a lot of people will move here.
It's a desert, man. Is anybody native in the desert? I mean, come on, man. I mean,
I know, right?
I don't even think people were meant to live in Arizona. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you want anything green, you need to pay for irrigation, right?
It's
cacti and scorpions.
That's a whole nother broadcast right there. But I think people just, they move here and then they realize it's not for them. They can't take the heat, congestion, things like that. I mean, it's a really well built area, metropolitan area, all planned communities. If it rains, we don't see a whole lot of flooding besides, in the washes, which you want to get out of. So they've just planned the neighborhoods here really well. And it's the transportation. Granted, we don't have the L that we did in Chicago or anything like that. Subways, obviously, but it's really the transportation as far as the different expressways. It's super easy to get around everywhere. Not a whole lot of traffic. But to people that have been here since, the early 2000s, it's definitely grown by leaps and bounds. Yeah. So I think you're seeing people that are a little bit annoyed by that, so to speak, as well as, that mix with the summers.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah. So let's look at our nation's capital here, Washington, D.C. Again, we're looking at square foot prices that have gone up significantly. Wow. And a lot of this is just, really surprising to me. In D.C., we've got a massive amount of price decreases, but I think that the Washington, D.C. market was so overvalued, overinflated. I mean, we really are starting to see, people move out because of its lack of affordability. And really, I mean, look, we're looking at where the money flows out of, right? I mean, the nation's capital. I mean, that's where all the money, all the jobs, I think the median income is the highest in the country, actually, in the Washington, D.C., the DMV. But anyway, inventory has shot up a little bit here since August. We're looking at 848. I mean, this is really a unique time of year to watch inventories rise in a lot of the country at the holiday season, because typically people don't want to list their houses, for, people to come marching through with their holiday decorations and their presents and their family in from out of town. So, just seeing that inventory is rising is really unprecedented. But the interesting thing here, only 2% of price increases. Relisted were 16%. This is, current day, 16% of the houses that are on the market have fallen through and are relisted. Some of them have fallen through and they were taken off the market. But just to quickly move on, the Baltimore market as well, square foot prices, again, I mean, on the rise, ever so slightly, $7 a square foot. But we are seeing sort of like a stabilization in pricing in Baltimore over the last couple months, still way down from a year ago. 41% of the houses, that's decreased a little bit. We were, at 42 just a couple weeks ago, 42.5. So we have seen the price decreases come down, and we've seen price increases. And a lot of this is new construction, that we've seen where, builders are raising their prices, not dropping their prices in the areas of new development in and around Baltimore. 10% relisted. Inventory we've seen, rise about 100 since August. But again, I mean, still not a bad market here. Things are slow, though. I mean, obviously things are way down. So we'd like to answer everybody's, I see a lot of comments coming in. Tell me about Colorado. Tell me about all these different things. If you want to send an email to me directly, I can let you know what's happening in your area. Send you a screenshot. If you want to send me an email, it's at ts@sacsrealty.com. What I'd like to do now is kind of, a few weeks ago, we had a Tuesday night podcast. It was live, and I was in Puerto Rico. Had some amazing interviews while I was there. It was a whole lot of fun. One of them we did live. We had a little bit of technical difficulties in the beginning of the show. We didn't get to show, the internet and the Airbnb wasn't that great, but it was an excellent show. And I just want to play a clip because what I'd like to do is we're looking at these values and everybody's talking about, things kind of stabilizing and trying to guess what the market will do. And one of the things that I want to do is play a clip from that Tuesday night podcast. It's only about a minute 20 that we're going to play here. So hang on with us, but I think you're going to enjoy it. So let's go ahead and listen to Mike Maloney.
So where this arrow here, this is 2004, and I started presenting it back then saying that real estate was going into a massive...
Hold on. Sorry, guys. I'm hearing an echo. I don't know if you're hearing an echo.
I hear an echo. Yep.
Yep.
It's just
Let's see what
being
we got
played
here.
double.
Bear with us 1 second here while Joe figures it out. But what we're going to be looking at here is the Schiller Index of fair value, home value, compared, over decades, and really where we are today compared to what is Robert Schiller considers, and he's a professor at Yale, what he considers, Dr. Schiller, as being a very overpriced or overheated housing market, really nationwide. All right, so let's see.
bubble. And this data goes back to the year 1870. And so it's indexed and inflation adjusted. It's inflation adjusted, and then it's indexed at 100. So this is the percent change above and below 100. And you can see the 20s and the Great Depression, real estate was inexpensive. Now, I really do think that the 100 line sort of belongs at an average here where the 60s, 70s, 80s was. But currently, we're about 120 to 140, 130% overvalued. And that means that in order to get back to what would be considered fair value from 1870 to the year 2000, before we went into what I call the bubble century, which we'll get into.
All right, so here we go. Now, a couple things while we have this chart up that I want to kind of point out here is that if we look now, again, this 100 line is what's considered fair value for housing based on median income, what people can afford. And when we're looking at the lack of affordability today, obviously we all feel that pain, especially ones that have bought and purchased homes in the last couple of years, being way up higher on this index, real home price index, than we've ever seen in the history going back to the 1800s. So the interesting thing I want to point out here is that in the 1920s, we had what was known as the Roaring 20s. And this was a point in time where business was booming. We had a great, it was a great economic time. People were spending money. They were enjoying life, right? We didn't have the debt that we have today. And despite that being the case of the Roaring 20s, even up until there wasn't much that changed on the real home price index, according to Dr. Schiller here, even through the end of the Great Depression into World War II. Their home values were still very affordable compared to income. And that's a critical thing to look at here. So when we get all the way into, and what Mike Maloney was saying is that this line could be adjusted up into the 60s and 70s, so maybe go up a couple points at that 100 line should maybe be, he was suggesting maybe raised slightly. I don't necessarily agree with that, because what happened is during the 60s, getting into the 70s and the 80s, we had very high interest rates. So I can understand why home the home value to, what we were paying or making in wages was really a little off kilter. But interestingly enough, in the 80s is when we really started getting involved with kicking our jobs offshore, doing, offshore manufacturing. That really kicked in. I think it was like in 1982, 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs were offshored. And then all the way to the year about 2000, we lost 4 million manufacturing jobs. And 40% of our manufacturing was taken offshore. So I think there's a direct correlation about what started to happen when we watched home values go up about 310%, and we only saw wage growth go up about 17 something percent over that same period, the 80s to 2000s. And so I think we really started to see things get way out of whack. But the interesting thing to know here is that it wasn't until we started to see interest rates really drop to where the Fed started dropping interest rates to where we started to see where the real disparity with the home price values, how they really started to outpace wage. And, so we're always looking at, well, what does the monthly payment cost? But we're not really focusing and paying attention to the actual price of the home. And I think that's the danger zone where we are right now. And, really look at it now. So what Mike Maloney is suggesting is that we could actually see a home price crash if we were allowed to have a true correction, which creates a whole nother problem because of the banking industry financing all of these overvalued, according to this chart, overvalued homes over the last 20 years. Really, that's could be catastrophic since people aren't putting a lot of money down. What do you guys, any comments that you have to this chart? I mean, I don't know how long you guys have been in maybe you can tell us, Ryan, how long have you been in the housing market?
Owned homes for years, but as far as real estate goes, 7 years here. So as far as this graph goes, I would think there'd be some sort of adjustment to this 100 line here, skewed up, but I don't know the specifics of the line here, but what I could tell
what would raise that line, Ryan?
What would raise that line, Todd?
Wage growth.
That's true. Very true.
I mean, if you're looking at, affordability as an affordability index, or where, what we make, when we're looking at, we used to be able to buy a house for 3 times earnings, and then it was pushed to 4 times earnings. Now you just said, based where you live, it's 6 times earnings to enter the space. That's crazy. You go up north to the Northeast, it's 8 times in Boston, Massachusetts. So, when you look at that, so what do you think? When you look at a chart like this and we have to, come on. We're intelligent human beings here. We have to look at this chart and say, this is pretty screwed up.
It's definitely making it more difficult for, and create. That's why Phoenix is I think it's the top. Maybe Austin's right there with it as far with the build to rent. We have these mega apartment complexes going up. My last video on my YouTube channel, I toured 3 of them because, some people move here and they can't even afford a single family rental. So they're getting into these, what are called luxury apartment complexes. I don't know if there's any of those on the East Coast being built, but, paper thin walls, you walk into the nice lobby area and it pretty much sells you. But then once you get to your room, you're kind of like, oh boy, this is it. So definitely, having a lot of issues here with affordability, no question about it. And one thing I guess that I'm seeing here, I'm looking at some of my stats here, is that, in these last few months, we've seen, just in the luxury market, over $1.5 million, 46% of the buyers are buying cash, 55 plus communities here, 45%. Anywhere.
Are they investors?
I don't believe the investors
paying cash.
Typically, they're not investing in $1.5 million. You'll see them invest in around the median price. I mean,
we have
granted,
investors buying $1.5 million properties here. Foreign
granted, you might have
investors.
some. You could have some people doing some short-term rentals, things like that, for sure. But I'd have to look at the percentage of it exactly. But definitely a lot of cash buyers here. So, how will that pan out if we crash?
Yeah. Let's go back to that chart, Joe, and ask Chris. Chris, what do you think of this chart? Does this scare you at all? How long have you been in the business, Chris?
A little bit longer than Ryan, but I got in 2011, so 12 years now. The thing that's standing out, and it's concerning, but the thing that kind of stands out to me is when you see things kind of start to take off, like you mentioned in the early 80s. To me, it's almost a shift in consumer mentality, where, and you mentioned it used to be a 3x multiple, and then a 4 and a 5, and now we're 6 and 8. And I see this, and I don't know if somebody wants a house, they're going to buy a damn house. And if they've got to leverage it, I heard a mortgage lender talking about 40-year loans and 50-year loans on this. And, the only reason that loan product comes out is if there's somebody that's bound and determined to buy a house in a market that they can't afford. So now there has to be a product so that they can miraculously afford this thing. So, and that's kind of got two different sides to it, right? Like, I can't afford it. Well, here's a product that says you can afford it. Now I can afford it. Well, that's going to drive the price up even higher. So you just have this kind of yin and yang of A, can people afford it? B, should they afford it? C, what's the alternative to affording it? Because, I did a video, I don't know, about a month ago, where I was talking about the cheapest homes in Austin, or in the Austin MSA. We're talking $275,000 to $300,000. And when you put, call it 5% down, because typically somebody that's in that market, it's a 5% down buyer, whether it's FHA or conventional, their payment on that thing is going to be $2,400 a month. And
what's the median income?
It depends on which suburb. Most of the surrounding suburbs
the
are about
275
or
buyer.
80. They're probably around 60. So yeah, you're still seeing a 4 to 5x on that. But the thing on that is, that's where that home is priced. But if you're going to look at one of those was a 4-bedroom for $300,000. Okay, go rent a 4-bedroom house or a 4-bedroom.
Are these
apartment.
new?
Yeah,
Are these new homes?
Yeah.
These are new homes in HOAs.
Correct, and that's taking into account everything. PITI out the door, everything.
Oh, you think so? You think so until they finish these communities and the HOA fees quadruple.
Well,
ours
fair.
just went up.
But again, back to the point of, you can spend, even call it $2,800, $3,000 on your mortgage and everything combined. Well, if you go rent a 4-bedroom single family house, you're still going to be at $3,000. So what's the consumer going to do at that point if they want to live in Austin, if they have to live in Austin? They just got a job transfer, maybe Samsung, they hired a subcontractor from the East Coast that came out to work on a $20 billion Samsung facility. Okay, well, crap, I got to be here for 3 years. Am I going to buy, or I'm going to rent for 3 years? I think that's the dilemma. And so, I don't know, I talked around in circles a little bit, but I think some of this has to be attributed to buyer sentiment. And by God, I'm going to have a house. I'm not going to rent. I'm going to buy, because I've been told my whole life.
You know what? If they had more repo guys for cars, there'd be a heck of a lot more cars repoed. In fact, these companies went out and bought parking lots, that are full with repossessed cars, because people said, if I want a car, I'm going to go out and buy one. And they were in the pandemic, paying. I was talking to somebody today, and they said, man, you remember just a couple of years ago, people were paying $20,000 more for a vehicle than they should. Craziness, right? A lot of that I feel was, contrived. It's funny, because here I remember driving through the car lots in Maryland, and they'd have like 8 cars on the lot. And then I would go to Texas, and I'd see the park, the cars are full in the Texas, car lot. So I'm like, wait a minute, how can they have cars in Texas and not have cars in Maryland? So it was very interesting to see that. But, I'm kind of curious, Chris, what is the HOA fee for a $275,000 new build in Austin, Texas?
Typically, there are next to zero amenities in those neighborhoods, so those HOAs are going to be $30 to $40 a month.
Right. $30 to $40 a month, and that's at new construction.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you see where they could easily go to 120 a month?
I mean, they could, while the builder still has it, or with inflation, and things just get more expensive. I mean, I could see it, but I shouldn't say it. I don't think it'll happen because, greed and everything else. So,
well, I mean, it's just what I see happening. And, I was in that space is that the builders are not practical with how much cost it takes to maintain things.
That's
and
fair.
You guys in Texas have another 2021 ice storm, and your power grid goes down for, whatever, a couple days. And, and all of a sudden now you're hiring contractors that you didn't expect. And now people are getting $1,000 special assessment bill in the mail.
Special assessments, those are a real deal. Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what happens in the real world.
Yep.
As people are buying these houses. Now you're looking at 5% of the purchase price is now what the monthly HOA. I mean, when you start looking at, a 0.5%, sorry, not 5%, but 0.5%, right? So you're looking at, 6% annually is going to HOA fees, which is crazy. So, for those of you out there that are considering buying a new house, and we're going to dive into some of these options that we're seeing buyers doing right now to move forward with, if, like Chris said, if you're going to buy a house, you're going to buy a house. And, a lot of people are dead set on doing it, and that's fine. Well, I'm not telling you not to. What we've been doing is saying, look, if you're going to buy a house, you better know all the facts.
Be smart about
it. You better slow your exuberance down. Let's talk about, I'm going to ask you guys some trivia questions. You ready? We'll start with Ryan. I feel like we got to get him talking a little bit more here. Ryan, you ready? You ready for some trivia?
Is he frozen?
He's
Might be
frozen.
frozen.
Ryan's frozen. Perfect timing, Ryan. Going to ask you questions
frozen.
about some trivia questions, and you're frozen. All right, next we'll go to Chris. Chris. All right. Huh? Can we still hear you, Ryan?
I can hear you guys if you can hear me. So you can.
All right, now we got you. All right. You were trying to get out of this. All right, here you go. Ready, Ryan? You're not Googling
I
this.
think
We're
so.
watching your fingers. Don't type. How long ago was it that only 1% of the homes had electricity and indoor plumbing? How long ago was that?
Oh, jeez. Electricity and
All right, we'll
plumbing.
save you. 1920. In 1920, only 1% of homes. I
was
want to
gonna
just
say
kind of talk about this again a little bit because I want to. This is going to build up, so you guys stay with me here, because what we're really trying to do is figure out what the heck went wrong. I mean, we look at the chart, we know what's going on, but we also saw in that Dr. Schiller, graph where that housing affordability. Home prices went up with inflation. And you know what really is supposed to go up with inflation too is wage growth. Yeah. So we got to a point and right around the 80s when that stopped happening. And that is one, I believe, is because we became a global economy and gave up on our manufacturing here in the United States of America. I still don't understand it. Why? Because they said that they did this to be able to, save Americans money because you could build it offshore for cheaper, but then you have all the tariffs and all the taxes that go into that. And I don't know. I see Walmart where everything breaks. And we have to buy it like 6 times. And before the can opener actually used to last for like 30 years. You bought a can opener, you never bought another can opener, right? I mean, you buy pots and pans, they last forever. They don't, whatever. So next question. So we'll give this one to you, Chris. When did half of the houses in the U.S. have electricity? What year about did half the homes?
I'm going to say it was the late 30s.
Well, you're close. I mean, in 1920, 1% of the houses had electricity. In 1925, half of the houses had electricity.
Wow.
Half of them. Now, guys, what I want everybody to realize here is that some of you that are alive today, and you wouldn't be watching if you weren't listening, but for those of you that are alive today, the chances are for some of you, I'd be really stretching. You'd be over 100 years old, but for many of you, your parents lived during the time when 1% of the houses or 50% of the houses had indoor electricity and plumbing. And for everyone else, pretty much, I mean, that could be watching our show, your grandparents or great-grandparents had a house that maybe had electricity and indoor plumbing, maybe not. So I want everybody to understand that it wasn't that long ago, 3 generations ago, that our houses didn't even have electricity in it. And that's kind of scary also in itself, because when we start thinking about like the power grids and, the threats to our power grids and could take us back. I mean, think about it. Back then, people could live without electricity. You think 3 generations later, we are 100% dependent upon electricity. If the power grids go down, and by the way, they say like 9 power grids or 9 out of 2,000 power grids in the U.S., if 9 of those power grids go down, and there are specific ones, we are in a complete blackout coast to coast for could be weeks or a month, and we cannot survive without electricity. They say that 90% of the people would not survive months beyond, even a month, a lot of people wouldn't survive. Because if you think about it instantly, and what happened in Texas, Chris, and you know this, in a matter of 2 short weeks, there was nothing on the shelves. I mean, this is like, you're talking about the pandemic. They were in blackout. They had rolling blackouts. They had water boil, orders because you couldn't even drink the water. So think about the people that are living in apartments, people that are living in the city water dependency, no water, 0 water, guys. You know what happened then? All their pipes bursted, and a lot of our manufacturing, all of our paints went into, complete shortages because, all the plants, I mean, everything blew up, all the chemical plants, complete disaster. But I just, and I'm not trying to suggest that our power grid's going to go out, but they say that there are literally hundreds, maybe 700, 1,000 attacks a day, cyber attacks to our power grid. But I just thought it was interesting. In 1936, and I have cheat sheets here, so I'm lucky because I knew I was going to ask these questions. 1936, FDR signed the Rural Electrification Act of 1936. And by 1945, only 85 still, 1945, 85% of the homes were powered by electricity. And it wasn't until 1960 that virtually all houses were powered by electricity. One other trivia. Let's do this. All right, we'll ask you, Ryan. What year was it that zoning laws came into effect? Started to come into effect in the U.S.
That was definitely 1942.
What's that? I can't hear him.
1942.
1942. All right.
1942. Let's.
Right, you're wrong. 1904. And that was in Los Angeles. Can you believe that? Wait a minute. No, let's stop for a second, because there are probably some Californians listening. And there are people like you, Ryan, and Austin, and Chris in Austin. You guys are saying, like, Californians, the domestic migration. I mean, I have a friend of mine. He's a real estate agent in Nashville, Tennessee. And he said, man, if he hears one more person say, hey, I'm moving from California and I'm interested in buying a house. But can you imagine, with all the regulations, that they were the first state to develop zoning laws? I'm just so glad that they have kept it consistent through all the years, that they're the ones that adopted and it all comes over this way. Thank you, California. It all makes its way east because 1916, would you believe it? That's when New York, started their zoning resolution laws in 1916. So it took 12 years to go from the West Coast to the East Coast. But geez, after that happened, people weren't allowed to build houses in their own yard. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine if you're in a housing crisis today and you want to build a house in your backyard and you were pre-1904, you just get your buddies together and you build your kid a house? Wow. Isn't that nice?
Makes sense.
All right, let's talk real estate, guys. Ryan, should people be buying a house right now?
Oh, if you have to, do it. I think it's worth it if you're going to stay in it for 6 or 7 years at least. I have this one client that's been, every time I see him, he's just, he's going through the pros and cons with me, crunching the numbers, and he's like, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense for me. So, I mean, if you're going to be in the home for 7, 8 years, I think it makes, ideally longer, because that's probably when your break-even point's going to be between rent and owning. But it just depends on your situation. So you just got to do what's best for you. I mean, if you're like a lot of people who move here for 2 years and leave, you're kind of gambling. We're really volatile in terms of price shifting. So it's like, flip a coin, where's the price going to go? I don't know. And, then you're paying closing costs and whatnot. And so it just depends what your situation is, I guess, which is a pretty generic cliche answer, I guess.
Zillow published an article not that long ago. I think it was Zillow. I don't know if you saw it, but they said that 13 years is a magic number right now. You have to live in the house for 13 years to build up enough equity, is what they're projecting, to be able to sell, because you need about 10% equity by the time you pay, commissions and transfer recordation fees, things like that, not counting repairs. I know buyers want a lot of repairs right now. But Chris, What are you telling people? You think they should buy a house?
I'm kind of along with Ryan on this. Some people should buy houses. Some people should not. And you better have somebody you trust walking you through that decision. So some people have to. Let's just be honest. Your job transfer, whatever. I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about people.
Why do you have to?
Well, I mean, you're right. You don't have to. But again, the scenario of you're working for a subcontractor and all of a sudden you're getting shipped. Your whole crew is getting shipped to Taylor, Texas, to build a Samsung factory. You're making $80,000-$90,000 a year as a contractor, and your job gets shipped to Taylor, Texas. Well, you can stay where you are, or you can move with them. So I guess you don't have to make a good decision based on economics, but talk to people that are smarter than you are, and I'm not always smarter than you are.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who's smarter than me to know whether I can afford it or not. I mean, I don't. You may be able to tell me that I can afford it, but I think I'm the only one that really knows whether I can afford it. Well, and that people that are smarter than me may tell me I'm in the wrong business, that I need to do a career shift, and then I definitely don't want to buy a house. I might be stuck.
I will say,
look, I respect both of your opinions. I'm not saying that, I think people have to put on their big boy and girl pants. But I think the problem that, when we look at that, let's pull that Robert Schiller, Dr. Schiller graph up again, because, I like to look at, I'm just a data-driven person. I mean, to me, and I could be 100% wrong, man. I'm not, no one knows what's going to happen. But when I look at this chart, I don't know, man. I remember what happened, and I just want to say, in the crash of 2008, when we bottomed out in 2011, 2012, we still didn't hit that 100 line. I mean, look at that, right? So we were way far from the top, but we still didn't hit that 100 line. So, maybe we never hit that 100 line again. But would it be impractical? So what we have to do here is we have to look at the odds. If I'm considering, and look, I'm talking to first-time buyers, because I don't really care about the ones. I do care about them. I'm not saying I don't care about buyers, but what I try and really focus on is somebody that has zero clue of what it's like to own a home. And I'm not putting them down about it. But when I'm looking at a first-time buyer and I'm looking at this chart, I'm not making their decision for them. But I have to say, look, man, history of ups and downs. We've never seen a bubble like this before. We have never seen home prices, no matter how you want to slice it. We have never seen home prices trade at the multiple of earnings than ever before. And I've said it before. I said it last week. If we look at the stock market, I mean, you look at the multiples of what the stocks are trading against earnings. This is nuts. I said something about the electricity because I wanted people to think about what happens if the grid goes down. Not to panic, but I mean, can you imagine what life would be like if it just shut down for a matter of weeks? We're thinking about, we're looking at this housing metric. This doesn't make sense. Neither does everything being reliant on the grid make sense to where we're so vulnerable. So when I'm looking at this, I have to look at this and say, if I'm a first-time buyer, unless I make a lot of money and I have 6 months cash in the bank after I pay for everything, I mean literally everything, moving boxes, you name it, I can't advise them to buy a house right now. If they want to do it, that's up to them. But if they're asking me in my opinion, again, I could be wrong, but I think we got to see a correction here. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the government is going to do, what they have up their sleeve as far as stimulus, whether they're just going to helicopter money to people and pay for their repairs, their home repairs. People are maxed out in credit card debt. They're maxed out in their car loans. I talked to a guy yesterday. Man, this guy has a $1,600 a month car payment.
Oh, gosh.
What?
Oh, my God.
For 6 years. And you know
my
what he
God.
said to me? And I was like, man, that's crazy. And he's a construction worker. I love construction workers. I'm a construction worker, man.
What's that car? What is that? What
he
is?
bought a Mercedes.
Oh.
And he's literally a construction worker. I know how much he makes. I'm like, man, you know what he said? He said, man, I wanted it. I'm like, Chris, it's like what you said. If they want it, they're going to buy it. $1,600 a month. He's like, but you know what? I didn't have to make my payment until now. He got 3 months of no payments, right? 7% loan. This is true, honest to God. 7% loan, right? 6-year loan. And he said, yeah, but they wanted me to do a 7-year loan. But I said it wasn't worth the difference in the reduction of the payment. It was just like $150 less a month.
Wow.
To do the 7-year. I'm like, man, whatever. Here's the issue. If this recession continues, this is cautionary times. If you don't think it's cautionary times, you better be, something, I guess, than I don't. This is cautionary times. We're in uncharted territory here. If we do have a recession, construction jobs are going to get halted. This is discretionary spending, right? People don't have to redo their bathrooms. They don't have to redo their kitchen. They don't have to redo the roof. They can put a bucket underneath the hole. I've seen that too. All right, well, let's talk about the shenanigans that are going on right now. I don't know. Maybe you guys like the shenanigans that are happening. What are you hearing? I mean, Ryan, let's talk about date the rate. For all the lenders that are out there, and we want to dance with you here tonight.
Well, the
You're gonna
rate's
love us
looking.
by the end of this show. Date the rate, marry the house.
The rate's looking like Jamie Foxx in Living Color's Wanda character. So I don't know about that.
What do you think? Date the rate. Have you heard a lender say that?
Yeah, it's pretty rough. So I think that's something that'll get people off the couch and get their minds going. There's a lot of buy down options as well, especially with these new construction stuff. That's what we're seeing. Asking for seller concessions is always an option. Seems like, I don't know how things are by you, Chris, but stuff's appraising here when we're asking for concessions. So, And actually lately, a lot of if they aren't asking for concessions, we're getting it for under appraised value, which is kind of nice. So
Should they date the rate?
yeah, I mean, if they have to, if that's the only bachelorette available. I
Chris?
mean, I'll tell you what, I've technically dated the rate, as weird as that sounds. I purchased a home back in April, a short-term rental over here in my neighborhood. So trying to do the old investment thing. Short-term rental is not a lot of fun if you're cleaning it yourself. So yeah, but we're giving it a whirl. So I guess I'm part of that. So I did it.
How about you, Chris?
I'm going to take it from because there's so many different parts to that. I'm going to take it from your perspective. First time home buyer, and that's what I'm going to talk about. If you are going to date the rate, you had better be prepared for that rate not to go down. Because you don't count on it, because like Ryan's saying, if you've got a builder offering you a 3-2-1 buy down, well, what happens in 3 years if the rates don't go anywhere?
You're screwed.
And
Exactly.
you can't afford 8% interest.
Yeah, you're screwed.
You need to understand what's going to happen, and this goes back to having a professional, right? That somebody that, and you said you got professionals that'll tell you, and people that are smarter than you, that'll tell you things you don't agree with. You're the only one that can do it. But if you don't have somebody that'll sit there and explain to you, this is what a 3-2-1 buy down does. This is what it looks like if rates do not go down. Go find another professional. So you can date the rate. It's gambling. It's investing. But it better make sense at 8.5% or 8% or whatever rate you're getting now, because there's a chance it ain't going anywhere.
I think what a lot of the lenders don't tell people, and or they're not very clear around, and I've heard them describe it firsthand. And by the way, I throw them out of the office when they start saying that crap. When they, I mean, that's when the conversation ends, doesn't it?
I mean, you give them the look, and then things become very quiet.
I have to go. Right, I have to go. I get up and I got to go.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we're done.
We're done.
It's just because, look, if people, they're big boys and girls again. I mean, if you tell somebody, hey, look, you have just like you both have really said, I mean, if you don't have a choice or whatever, you're going to buy the house, you're going to do it. But the problem is that people don't tell you that you can't always refinance. I mean, it's not possible sometimes. So it's sort of setting them up for a disaster. It's like, okay, well, we can stretch today, and if we don't buy today, the home prices are going to go up, and we're never going to own a house. Woe is me. And, but let's go ahead and take it to 60% LTV, to where, or our debt to income ratio, where we're not LTV, the debt to income ratio, where, we can afford 60% of our salary to bills. Right. And then they're in hopes for the next couple of years. They're going, oh, man, they're saying rates are plunging, and it's 0.38%, and it makes zero difference. You can't refinance. Don't, give it up. But what happens is you have to realize that there is a cost associated. And most lenders will tell you, if they're doing a accurate analogy, an analysis for you on your refinance, most lenders will tell you, based on how long you're going to continue to live in the house, it's not worth it to reset the zero again on your amortization schedule and pay all the interest up front, because for years, first 5 years of your mortgage, you're paying off interest. It's compounding interest, ridiculous. You're
Nobody
paying
tells
the
you that.
bank the price of the financing up front, because they know you're going to sell the house. So they want to get as much money as they can from you, so your principal balance doesn't go down that much. So what they don't tell you is you're going to pay for appraisal. Depending on what state you live in and county, you're going to pay recordation fees, right, to re-record the new deed with the new lender. You're going to pay loan origination fees, right? To do that. That's just in the date the rate scenario. If you're not happy with the rate that you're buying at today, don't buy a home in hopes, in a prayer that the rates are going to come down, because they might not. And then if your house doesn't appraise because you overpaid in your scenario, maybe, right? And your house doesn't appraise, you're going to need to put more money down. They also don't tell you about that up front, right? So you have to be careful, guys, when you're dating the rate. But let's talk about the rate buy downs, because you guys mentioned it. I wasn't even talking about that, but while we're talking about it, let's talk about, Ryan, what's the 2-1 rate buy down?
So if you're getting a rate of 7.5%, 2-1 buy down is going to be the first year your rate's going to go down to 5.5, and the second year it's going to go up one, basically subtracting 1 from 7.5, so you're at 6.5%. And then the third year you're back to your original rate. So it helps you. It helps you in the short run. A couple years, but it's. At the end of the day, that's 2 years out of 30, or 40 years if they come out with that product. But so yeah, it's just here's the thing. I think everybody's normalized these low rates, and I think it's easy for a lender to sell them because everybody knows, or everybody thinks that these rates aren't normal. So we're in a weird time. Rates are really high right now, right? So because rates are high, they have to come down. So since they're going to come down, like a lender will tell you, this is the deal you should do, getting back to your date the rate thing. So it's just everybody's normalized 3-4%, and it's, who knows if we'll see it again.
Yeah, let's take a look here, because again, I like the charts. I'm a data guy, man. I want to, I need to look at numbers. I can't listen to hysteria. I will go insane if I have to listen to the news headlines about, them saying, oh, rates plummeted. And I'm like, oh, I'm getting excited. I get up and I'm like, rates plummeted? Oh, and then I look at it and I'm like, that's not plummeting.
Yeah.
The Fed raised rates, Powell raised rates higher and faster than any Fed in the history, even faster than Volcker did back in the 70s, right? The Fed raised these rates, man. Boom. Like, what? Come on, man. Why weren't we doing this like a year ahead of time? Why are we hovering at 0%? Meanwhile, they know that inflation's at 9.1, 9.3. What we really know is 20%, 25, 40% inflation on the goods and services that we need the most. But yet, interest rates are 0. And the banks are allowed to just give as many loans as they can. Am I the, I don't know, man. Maybe I just need to wake up here and see maybe I'm wrong. But look at this rate chart here. Because what we have to focus on and what we have to realize is that when we let's just take, so from 1997 to 2006, almost a decade, home prices, even though when we looked at the affordability chart, we haven't looked at that yet. We're going to get to that. And we're going to get to your questions too, but we're just having fun. Mm-hmm. But when we look at this chart, what I want to tell you is when I was building and, rehabbing and a contractor since 1989, 1997, we went through a rough period, the late 80s, early 90s. A home builder that's still around today beat me for a lot of money. Paid me 10 cents on the dollar. But still, what happened was, look at the interest rates coming into 2012. Right? Look at this. Prior to 2012, these interest rates were at 5-6%, were great rates over the prior 2002 to 2008. And 2002 and 2008 were great rates compared to 96 all the way into the 2000s. And what we see here is, remember when we showed you that chart about how homes started to go over, trading over income values, becoming less and less and less and less affordable? You think it has any correlation to interest rates?
I was going to ask you to overlay those graphs.
Well, now you're getting into all these complexities. Chris, you're asking me to do that. I could. I didn't think we were going to pull this up, but look at this. Now I ask you, look at this. Look at these interest rates compared to where it was. Man, we're going all the way back to the the late 90s. Do you think interest rates are going back to 2.75%?
No.
I don't think so.
I mean,
Why?
what would that do to home prices?
Same thing it did in 2020 and
Through the
2021.
roof.
It'd be worse.
Yeah.
Let's go, and then we'll take some questions. I promise. I want to look at the. Let's look, Joe, at the NAR chart. Ooh, this is just getting fun, y'all. I can say y'all with you guys because you all say y'all.
That's right.
Y'all.
All right, here we
See
go.
y'all in Arizona.
Huh? No, he's from Chicago. He doesn't say y'all.
Nobody's from here, so.
Fair point.
I love you guys, man. Look, I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just, I like a good debate. That's all. Look, nobody knows. Look, we're all in this industry together. You guys are pros. You're professionals. We wouldn't be talking to you if you weren't. So, high reviews. People love you. Your clients love you, guys. These are great agents, and they have YouTube channels too in the show notes. We already have their links dropped in the show notes. You can check them out for yourself. Subscribe to their channels. Show them some love.
Show me some love.
Yeah, show them some love. All right, guys, look at this. So this one, man, this is like one of the charts that NAR puts out, and I'm always like looking at their stuff, going like, where's the, I got to compare it month over month to see if it changed what it was, what their metrics were. But NAR, here they are. They've been in the news a lot, guys. We'll give them some slack. We'll cut them a break. I mean, maybe they'll win their appeal. I don't know. Crazy lawsuits going on right now. I know we're at the top of the blame, at the blame chart. If there was a blame chart here and they had, I don't know, we'd probably be battling it out somewhere between loan officers, realtors, and let's just throw home inspectors in there too. Why not? Because they don't need much to get a home inspector license. And if they have a home inspection license, they think that they can go out and tell people, I'm not picking on you guys. I'm just telling you facts. There's a lot of things that go into the play of what's going on here today and why buyers have remorse, whether they got an inspection or didn't, or the inspector didn't tell them about this or tell them about that, but they didn't move the couch and nobody told them that they weren't checking anything behind furniture. But look at this chart. This is crazy. So what I want you all to focus on here, which is really cool, I'm going to teach you all something tonight. The 100 line means, and you guys probably already know it, but it means that you can afford a median priced home on a median salary. Now, people say, what's median mean? It means in the middle. Average is where you take everything, put it together, divide it by the number of things that you added up. That's an average. A median is the middle, right around the highest and the lowest. But the 100 line means that a median salaried person or household can afford the median priced home. And here's what I want to show you guys. In 2006, they could afford it, and that was the peak. That's interesting, isn't it? So when the peak happened before the great financial crisis, the biggest housing crash post-World War II happened, a median income family could still afford a median priced home. And then look what happened. The affordability index was way up there. How home prices came down, people could really afford it. It's below that line today, and it wasn't below the line in 2006. So everybody has been able to afford it based on their jobs and the home prices all the way up until about 2021. Doesn't that tell you something? We are looking from the year 2000, even during the great financial crisis, what before it led up to it. And I told you 97 to 2006 was a runaway train. And people were like, oh yeah, but the subprime loans and the blah, 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 blah. Right here, the chart shows you that they could afford a house. The median salary could afford the median priced home. It isn't until now, ladies and gentlemen, and this chart could go way back, but it's not until now. We're looking at, since 2021, the home affordability index, the HEI, has dropped below 100. What do you guys have to say about that?
I mean, it seems kind of crazy to me. I haven't seen this graph much, I'll be honest with you, Todd. So it's new to me, and I would almost feel like it's not accurate, but you got it here, so it must be.
You just told me that your houses are trading 6 times earnings.
Yeah.
How's it not accurate? It's not affordable. That's what this chart says clearly. Homes are not affordable. They're not affordable, but they were affordable in 2006, leading up to the GFC.
Yeah,
they were saying, well, house prices were a runaway freight train then. No, not according to this. The housing affordability index, these people back then could afford the houses. They can't afford them now. What would happen to this chart unless we see massive wage growth? When you look at this chart, if this doesn't concern you, when you look at this data over the history of the last 23 years, which includes the great financial crisis of 2008 and leading up to it, people could afford their house, and now they can't. Do you think homes are overpriced?
I mean, that's what the data says.
I mean, it shows it right here. National Association of Realtors show it. Chris, what do you take?
I'm like Ryan. This is the first time I'm looking at it, so I'm kind of digesting it.
Told you I was going to teach you all something.
Yeah, the first thing that jumps out at me is exactly what you're saying. Is if you look just in terms of overall volume of where we are, we're so close to where we were in 2006. It would say if people could afford it in 06, people can afford it now.
What happened in 06 when the affordability index hit at 100? What happened?
Oh, it rebounded up. Yep.
We had a collapse in home prices.
Well, yeah, correct.
That's the only reason why the affordability index shot up.
Yeah.
Because in 06, when we hit 100 in 06, that was the beginning, that was the peak. That was the peak of home prices in 2006 during that great financial crisis. Then home prices fell is the only reason affordability went up. Mm-hmm. Because home prices crashed all the way into 2012. Do you look at that chart? In 2012, when we came up with the short sale pilot program, 2011, 2012, and we allowed everybody to short their mortgages and basically turn the keys into the bank, and we gobbled all those defaulted mortgages or defaulted homes, these bank-owned properties, and fed them to Wall Street. We were at the highest, at the lowest crash point. We were at the highest affordability for housing than we had seen in years and years and years and years because home prices crashed. Now, what I'm saying is, looking at this chart, we're right where we were in 06. We're actually probably in 07 right now. We're probably in 07. When you look at this stuff, it's amazing. But here's the difference. This is dropping below the 100 line now. Mm-hmm. and it didn't in '06. So that means things are really worse as far as affordability from the peak of '06. That's how much more of a bubble we're in when we dissect this chart. That's what I'm talking about. So when I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what the Fed's going to do, what kind of rabbit they're going to pull out of their hat. But when I'm trying to figure it out from a perspective of being in business and helping buyers and sellers and trying to navigate the storm, looking at where we came from, projecting where we might be going, I would be not doing my job if I didn't look at this data and decipher it and say, man, what the hell is going to happen here? We either got to have another rabbit out of our hat, and that line is going to continue to skyrocket, or we're poised for a massive correction. Let's take some questions.
Okay, first I would like to address the poll. So, Joe, are you able to pull that up? But
all right, and this is the poll of the worst advice that you could ever get right now in the housing market. And I wanted to find out, what is it that you would think? One of them, thank goodness, is the lowest number. Is the worst advice is you should use a realtor. I mean, I'm glad people don't agree with that one. But this is interesting because this supports you guys. Hey, not that I don't support you guys, or that I don't feel a little bit different. But looking at the data and being in the business a lot longer than you guys, that's not a dig. It's just a fact. I mean, that's just the way it is. But look, I hope we figure out a way to make things affordable. I don't know what the magic is. Here's the thing. We either need a better welfare system where we provide everyone with welfare, including me. I shouldn't be excluded into everyone. Melissa, too. We're going to airdrop money. I mean, Joe, we'll include him. We're either going to need massive wage growth, massive. Don't get any ideas.
Melissa needs
knock,
a raise.
knock, knock. Right.
Don't get any
I'm
ideas.
requesting a
We're
meeting
either
with
going to
Todd
need
tomorrow
massive
morning.
wage growth, so you can all go into your employers tomorrow and tell them you want 50% more, except you guys, and see how that works out for you. I mean, after all, it is the holiday season. Maybe they'll forget the fact that sales have slowed down for everyone. Here we go. What's the worst housing market advice? Buy now, buy with adjustable rate mortgage, wait for further price reductions, use a realtor. So 586 people have spoken.
That's all really relatively close. I mean,
Yep, somebody just voted. They just sold 29 on the buy
29.
now. Everybody hit the charts, hit the tolls, the poll. If you haven't done it, come
Yes.
on before we end this thing.
Before
Let's
we
see.
end.
We're at 587 votes. Can we get another? Can we get, do I get, look, I'll be an auctioneer, man, just like the houses. Can we get another 20,000? 20,000. Give me 20. Give me 20. Give me 20. Give me 25. Give me 20. I'm a pretty good auctioneer, huh? This is the first time I ever did anything like that before.
yeah.
There we go. There, the polls are going up. All right, here we go. Let's see if this poll changes. Does it change after we showed you the charts, guys? This is fun. I feel like a legitimate auctioneer. Man, if you want to add your house in here, we'll sell that too. We'll just whatever, man.
Oh my
Let us
gosh.
know.
We'll check
604. Here we go.
before
It's
the
staying
end of the
consistent. Boy, I tell you.
Yeah. But we do have some super cash, super chats. We have, according to
Charles.
Danielle DiMartino Booth, 1% of companies in 2008 were zombie companies. Right now, that's 25% zombie, meaning makes no money, layoffs. So thank you for that,
Yeah,
Charles.
thanks, Charles. We appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, Danielle, and by the way, guys, I'm not making money promoting people. If you don't know who she is, I mean, she's worth a listen. I don't get into the politics here. You guys think that I do, but I don't. Really, I don't care which aisle you're on. I think we're all one, and we should be working together, not against each other. But sometimes she does get into the politics a little bit, but she's great to listen to, and she has a lot of common sense. So
Yeah.
Charles obviously is a fan of Danielle as well. All
Mm-hmm.
right, what else we got?
We got another one here. Any thoughts on the first lien HELOC at 7.75 at this time?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know that the HELOC's the first lien, but when you're looking at, man, I have friends of mine. If you like that little hand movement there, I wasn't trying to fly away. I have friends that actually took out HELOCs on their houses and bought second houses. And one of them was a real estate broker. I actually went to broker class with her. And man, we had lunch not that long ago. And she was like, oh man, I got really screwed on that deal. So yeah, I mean, HELOCs are going up. And in fact, we have a local cheerleader.
She's recommending that.
Yeah, she's recommending, hey, get a HELOC on your house, blah, blah, blah.
I don't know if that's great. Don't think
Maybe there's some introductory rates, just like, I get them all the time in the mail, like, hey, you can get a $30,000 loan on your credit card for, 0% interest. It costs you 4%, and it goes to 28.99% if you don't pay it off in the 12-month period. I mean, that hook, 4% origination fee. I mean, that's not bad. You lose 4% on your money right off the start. And they're saying that there's 0% interest. Well, there's a 4% origination fee. I mean, 4% in just not that long ago, it was 0% or 0.2%. Now it's 4% to get a loan. Origination fee to get a free 12-month and then whack you with a almost, 25% interest rate. All right.
Yeah, we got another one here, another super chat. What is the name of that affordability chart?
Yeah, so that's the affordability, the HEI. You can find that, Joe. What's the
American Auction Forum.
we pulled that off American Auction Forum. Is that where it was? Put the yeah. I mean, you can search NAR housing affordability index. HAI is what you're really looking for. And a lot of it, guys, a lot of your states will have it broken down too. And even some states have it in the counties where you can see what the HAI index is in your state specifically. But, there it is. He just put it up there. So we'll leave it up there for a minute. If you guys, I don't know if you can copy that off of, but if you just, Google search or send me an email and I can send you the link directly. In fact, I can send you whatever charts that we're showing you tonight here if you'd like to have them. You could just send us an email. We don't spam you. We're not selling your email.
Yeah, we do have some other questions, though, that if we could just have a moment to talk about a couple of them. So we got a question here. Have we completely stopped purchasing mortgage-backed securities? If we start up again, that will lower mortgage rates. Does it put upwards pressure on inflation? It must.
You guys want to handle, either of you want to handle the question?
I let my lender handle questions like this. I'll let you.
All right. Yeah, so mortgage-backed securities are kind of a new thing. I think we didn't start buying them until, I think, back in 2009 or 2011, something like that. The government wasn't even in mortgages, outside of the bond market. The mortgage-backed securities, were put into place. They started buying these bonds because no one was buying houses. And they had to encourage people to buy houses, and that's why they, were buying them, and we were able to get 4% or better mortgages. So right now we have quantitative tightening happening. They're trying to shave trillions of dollars off the balance sheet. I think we still have about $4 trillion to go before we get back to even pre-pandemic levels, which is still high. Right now, we're not seeing the government purchasing mortgage-backed securities. They're trying to get rid of them. The big question is, will they start it up again? I think the answer is probably yes. A lot of the experts are believing that, if they don't, no one's going to be able to afford a home. And, this is the big question is, that we really have to that teeter-totter, because if they do this, we're going to lose any housing market correction that we have experienced. And they're really talking, Powell has been saying that shelter inflation needs to come down. He's really talking about rental rates that need to come down. So when the Fed's talking about putting downward pressure on rentals, you can pretty much guarantee that they're going to do everything that they can to do that. But what is the real question is, do the investors that, you have the government buying mortgage-backed securities, they're willing to do that probably for a lot lesser rate than the secondary, free market would do, because why would an investor want to buy a 4% mortgage when they can get a 5% bond? It doesn't make any sense. A 10-year bond with the government guaranteeing, their return on their investment. They don't have to worry about mortgage fraud. They don't have to worry about, whether the, borrower stops paying, whether the borrowers lose their job, whether home prices tank, whether we have another market crash or correction. Right now, mortgages to a lot of investors is a risky business. It's, locking in on a 30-year investment. And why would they do that and give it away when, you're at 5.5% Fed rate? Why? They need to make profit on their money. So, I think unless the government starts quantitative easing and buying mortgage-backed securities, we're not going to see low mortgage rates again. We're going to see 7s, 8s, maybe even double-digit mortgage rates before this is all said and done. I wouldn't be surprised rolling into next year if we don't see a bump up in mortgage rates and go to 10%. I don't think we're going to see this quantitative, easing in the first half of 2024 anyway, and that's a long way away. We're talking about 5 or 6 months. That's catastrophic to people that are struggling right now. So I think we're going to see a lot of pain before we see a break, and who knows what the break is going to be. The right thing to do would be for the government, in my opinion, to do absolutely nothing and let it correct itself. We've already seen that back historically, recessions, depressions, and panics back from the 1700s corrected themselves. We had them, the market would get out of whack. We'd have inflation. We'd have a recession for a short period of time every 2 years, every 3 years, 4 years. We'd have that. You can go back and look at it yourself. Just Google United States history of panics, recessions, and depressions, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It wasn't until we got to the 1980s to where we started to span these recessions over, we would have a 10-year period before we have a recession. And in my opinion, the only reason that is because we were, falsely stimulating the economy and kicking the can down the road and, suppressing the hardship that we should have had years before to automatically, work its way out. So, I think at some point it has to catch up. Now, we've already seen bank bailouts. We saw it in the March 12th weekend, which was huge. That was a big indication of the financial, the state of the banking industry. And I don't think that's improved. We haven't even seen the fallout yet of commercial defaults. We already, on whitehouse.gov, I think it was on October 27th, they published a fact sheet that basically said that they were going to dive in to, converting office buildings, failed office space, because they know they got to bail the banks out, so they need a solution with these office buildings. They're going to convert these office buildings into multifamily housing buildings, units. The issue here, and there, thank you, Joe. The issue here, October 27th, man, I got a good memory. The issue here is this. I can't remember what I was just talking about, but I can remember October 27th. So the issue becomes is they're getting into this now. They know this massive crisis is coming. They know this banking crisis is here. They know it. they're saying, man, we got to get in front of this thing. We better come up with a solution to take this space and turn it into housing that's well needed. Well, hello, I think you're like a day late. You're not $1 short because I don't think that's possible, but you're a day late on this because we have about 1.5 million of multifamily inventory that's coming on the market that's going to flood the market space. We're seeing rental decline nationwide in just about every market, right? We're seeing a softening of rentals, your rental rates. Right? We're seeing landlords now saying, I want out, which is one of the things I want to talk to you guys before we go. But now the White House published this fact sheet saying they know they're going to have essentially this big crisis of office space that they're going to have to deal with.
Are they going to have gas stoves in those multifamily?
Absolutely not. You know better, Ryan. You know they're not going to allow that, man. Gas stoves are bad, man.
You're going to see a lot of fires happening. I don't know. More so than any environmental risks, but we'll have to see. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Let us know. Stop in. I'm not going to
That's right. Yeah. All the insurance, actuators are like, what'd you just say? Did you say a lot of fire risks? You better, they're going to be documenting that, man. If these buildings start burning down, Ryan, they're coming looking for you, man.
Ryan does.
Like,
there is a question here for him.
All right, let's
Yeah,
give
we're going to
Ryan
take
a
this question. Does Ryan have any opinion on short-term rentals in the Scottsdale area? I have a buddy that is struggling with one. Guests are, and managing it is troubling.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I belong to a few Facebook groups and whatnot. It seems like either people are doing really well with them, or they're having a lot of issues, and they're offloading quite a lot of them. It's pretty easy to pick them up right now. I got one in Gilbert because it's just families that are coming in, and I mean that doesn't answer your question or anything like that, but yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of people partying up there, and I mean it's just a party zone. So as far as managing these things, we went in and kind of flipped one, and we put in a whole white bathroom, and yeah, it's like black hair is the best thing to pick up. Let me tell you, it's so much fun. I'm like in there in the shower, crawling around trying to pick up black hairs. So that's like the biggest problem I have in Gilbert. Yeah, man, it's tough, and getting to my point is finding a good cleaner that will do a good job is probably going to be troublesome too, but. Yeah, I almost purchased one up there, and luckily it took too long to build, so didn't go through with it. I would have had a partner and stuff, but as far as my opinion on that is just if it's making money, stick with it. But I can definitely see how the guests are going to be issues. The biggest issue, a lot of partying going on up there, so that's my opinion.
Yeah, well. What do you think they're going to ban them? I mean, that to me is the riskiest thing. Is a lot of these HOAs. You're telling me you're in a planned,
I'm in an HOA, yeah.
Planned communities, and you're saying that your area is all planned communities, which means if they're planned unit developments, I mean, you probably have multiple HOAs. You've got HOA of the master, and you got HOA in the individual association. In a lot of these communities, I know that's the way it is here in Maryland. With the master plan association. So do you think they're going to outlaw them, ban them?
Well, Scottsdale's got a lot of, they have a lot of rules and regulations, a lot of laws. So I believe there is a state law right now that still allows them. However, yeah, they're definitely pushing for some changes because, I mean, you're seeing like some crime and heavy headlines that are affected by these short-term rentals. What people like to do too, like when you go to Paradise Valley and some of these larger Scottsdale places, is they'll have a little Facebook group. They'll have one guy who's maybe 23 years old plan a party, and they'll just go there and have a DJ and take over the house for a day and totally trash it. So you get some really crazy things going on. So I could definitely see more regulations coming in the future. I have a buddy who works specifically for, city of Scottsdale for the short-term rental department, and he's always checking them out. Basically, he's fielding complaints all the time. So he's got a job because of it, and it seems like they're dealing with it and they're managing it. In other places, so I'm in an HOA. Scottsdale has a lot of non-HOA communities, so they're able to pretty much just, do whatever the Scottsdale laws are. I'm in an HOA in Gilbert, and for some reason, it's one of the few HOAs that allow short-term rentals, and we'll just have to see what happens with it. Definitely kind of rolling the dice with it, but we figure we could always turn it into a long-term rental.
I think we're going to see a massive exodus of Airbnbs. I think that they're going to clamp down. I know here locally in Baltimore, and which really crushed a lot of investors because a lot of people OD'd on, these short-term and mid-term rentals. They just went overboard. And I mean, we have, obviously we have NFL and Major League Baseball in Baltimore, and it services a lot of people. And a lot of people come in from out of town to see their sports team. And so around the stadiums, people really went crazy with these, Airbnbs. And then Baltimore came in and outlawed them. And they basically, that is good, right? They've been investor friendly to investors and having people put money in it. But now, since over the last probably 15 years, they've done everything they could to destroy, investor money into the area. So what they did was they hurt a lot by just outlawing them, and they were bringing a lot of revenue into the city because restaurants were thriving, the bars were thriving, but they said in order to have a Airbnb or short-term rental, it has to be your primary residence. That means you have to live there. And these people didn't live there, so there was a pretty major sell-off of these units. This has been a couple years, and Baltimore County is thinking about doing the same thing. In fact, they're telling people, "Hey, look, if you're going to do this, you better get it now because pretty soon we're going to stop it." Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We do have another question here that. Just a scenario. I bought 5 acres in rural Massachusetts for $130,000. Do I spend $150,000 to renovate an 1800 small farmhouse, spend $250,000 on a small modular, or sit tight in the camper on the property for 1 to 2 years?
One of you guys want to take that?
What would you guys say?
Personally, for me, if it's an 1800 small farmhouse, I'm just nostalgic. I'd spend 150 to do that, depending on the size, and it's got to make sense on a price per foot basis, kind of like Todd was saying earlier. But me personally, I'd renovate the small one. You've got 5 acres. What are your rules? Can you add a bigger one later down the road, or does it, increase the value? That 150, is it worth 280 at that point? Is it worth 300? It makes sense.
Yeah, if you can renovate, in my opinion, if you can renovate, for an 1,800 square foot house for $150,000, that sounds like a pretty good price. It's under $100.
I was reading it as an 1800s farmhouse.
I thought it meant circa 1800.
Oh, maybe renovate 1,800 small. Oh, I don't know.
It could
maybe
go
it
either
is.
way.
Could be. Yeah,
really?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was square
Maybe
feet.
Maybe if you could let us know, is it 1,800 or 1,800 square foot?
Yeah.
I think my answer would be the same, even though it's not as cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's 1,800, I say just keep it. It's a good year. So.
Yeah. There you go.
Yep.
Well, it was now, guys. You remember? Was that before electric and plumbing?
That was before.
1921.
People were talking about commercial buildings. Are like, you can't retrofit a commercial building. It wasn't made for homes. Well, you think you could retrofit a 1,800 circa home for plumbing and electricity? Yeah, sure you can. You can renovate anything.
How about this question, you guys? How far would home prices need to fall for this group to consider them reasonable?
To me, that's such a regionalized question. If you're trading it at 8x, where did you say, in Boston? Would falling to 6x make it reasonable? And then 6x in Arizona is unreasonable. Would falling to 4x? Well, in Austin, we're about 4.5. So it's such a regionalized question. That's so hard.
Yeah. I mean, Ryan, you want to take a shot at it?
I'd say just 20%. I think a 20% fall is.
Yeah, I would have to go with the multiple. I would think that if you could buy a house for 3 or 4 times median income in that area, that should be reasonable. I mean, so one of two things have to happen. Home prices, in my opinion, would need to come down substantially, or salaries would need to go up. Because here's the problem. The issue is that people can't afford to work for somebody if they can't afford to live close to work. And we're seeing people getting pulled back to work. In fact, I was talking to somebody today and they said, yeah, I mean, even the government, is calling back, I was talking to somebody in the Howard County government today and they said, yeah, we're even calling people back 2 days a week into a hybrid model. So it doesn't work for people to live far away from their offices. And, they need to be able to buy something where they work. So one of two things have to happen. We either need wage growth or we need home prices to adjust to come into the affordability. This 5, 6, 8 time multiple for home prices, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I think it's going to be this is going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next 12 months. We're going to know it all. For everybody that's made, fun of me for saying that home prices are dry. I mean, they have come down. I started calling it in April of 22. We hit the peak in May and June of 22. That's a fact. We saw it. I saw it beforehand looking at the charts. The charts don't lie. They may be off a couple months. They may be off 12 months. They may be off 2 years because you can't control what the government's going to do with stimulus and firing up the money machines. But inflation, we have massive inflation that's devaluing our currency. So it's going to get to a point where this regardless catches up and we have to have a correction. When does it happen? I don't know. We've been thinking that we would have seen, the blood in the streets, right? Like we saw in 2008, but I still think that we're only in 2007 today. So I think the next year is going to tell the story. When we roll in, and I've said this before, when Obama went into office, when he was inaugurated, he had in his lap, he couldn't have dumped it any more perfect. The great financial crisis was unraveling as Obama was inaugurated as the president of the United States. That's what I think 2025 is going to be. We are going to hand off the massive disaster, in my opinion, that we've built to the next president and say, look, this is now your baby, figure it out. What are they going to come up with? Who knows?
Mm-hmm. Kick it down the road.
Kick it down the road.
Bingo.
I think they should do nothing and let the market correction happen. That's my personal opinion. That's why I'm a real estate broker and not, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, or a senator or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right.
Another question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, you guys, I'm going to have you take a stab at this one too. Do you think high property tax states are worth it long term? The yearly property tax is half of currently renting yearly. Chris, what do you have to say?
Well, I live in a pretty high property tax state. This is a longer story. So we own investment properties. We own short-term rental properties in Colorado. People always ask us when we're moving to Colorado because we're up there several times a year. And every calculation that I can do with high property taxes versus income taxes in the tax brackets that we're a part of, it doesn't make sense to leave. It makes more sense to stay in Texas for us. Again, it's a math calculation. Long term, what's going to happen? I don't know, but if you had told me last year that the state of Texas this year in the 2023 legislative session was going to decrease property taxes as much as they have, average homeowners are going to get a decrease of somewhere like $1,500 to $1,800 a year. Okay, it's $100 a month, but that's the average property owner. I didn't think that would happen. So there are corrections that are happening. They're bringing it down. They realize it's an issue. Again, can that be sustained long term? I don't know. But long story short, it's just a calculation you've got to do, and nobody's got a crystal ball. I don't think property taxes are ever coming down, but you know what? They just made me a liar on that because they did it this year.
I'd say sounds like Illinois with that question. I moved out of Illinois, yeah, because our taxes got up to like 10,000 on a 300. What did we sell it for? Like $320,000. So that was a little rough. We also had family that was on fixed income, in-laws, and they could, they owned their home, but they could no longer pay the taxes on it. I mean, they got some tax breaks, but it was very difficult. So that was one of the reasons we moved down to Arizona, and taxes are cut down by about a third. Cannot complain. I like putting my money towards my home and not towards my property tax bill and towards other things. So, I mean, I guess it just depends. You have some people in Illinois that are still paying 25, 30 grand for their, $1 million homes, and they can afford it. So just depends on what your financial situation is and how much you love living by your family and friends, right? The people you grew up with. So that goes into it.
Yeah, we have pretty high property taxes here in Maryland. Frederick County is the highest in the state. We have Howard County, Montgomery County, Baltimore City is high. Properties in Baltimore City that I sold for $250,000 2 years ago. I had 4 of those together, sold it to an investor. I was paying close to about $10,000 a year for all 4 of them. So you figure $2,500 in taxes for a $250,000 house. That's pretty high. I mean, that's that's a pretty high tax rate. But it's worse. I mean, we've got some that houses are valued at $450,000 that are $4,500, $5,000, so pretty consistent in the county. And then you go to areas, in Howard County. I have friends of mine that are paying $25,000, $30,000 for their, $1.5, $2 million houses. So it definitely fluctuates. But I mean, property taxes are just something. I mean, look, the government needs more money. They're out of money. I mean, here in a couple of years, the cost of the debt, the interest load on the debt of the U.S. will be more than the tax revenue that they bring in. We have a new governor here in Maryland from what, I've kind of been researching. Looks like he blew through all the reserve here in a very short period of time of him being the brand new governor in the state of Maryland. And now they're doing cutbacks in the government, doing budget cutbacks and things like that. Well, that's only temporary to get through to that fiscal policy period, to where now they'll be looking at probably charging more taxes, and because there's very little, in my opinion, very little accountability on the amount of spending that goes on. I mean, you watch them, you're like, okay, did the road really need to be dug up? I mean, they have the money budgeted. If they don't spend the money, you guys that are in the government, this to be true. I have friends of mine that are in the government. I mean, they talk about it all the time. If it's money that's in the budget, it gets spent. Because if it doesn't, they spend it. Because if they don't spend it all, that gets cut away. It gets taken away the next year because they figure, well, you didn't need that much money. So, they're doing things for the wrong reason, in my opinion. Where's the incentive to save costs? Let's cut the budgets. Do we can we live with a pothole in the road, for crying out loud? Oh my gosh, my, $150,000 car just went into a pothole. It needs to be, I'm going to call my, legislator and let them know that they need to come out and fix this hole, and then it gets fixed. Come on, man. This is insanity. In a time of debt, what do? We stop spending money. We reel it in and we say we need to balance the budget. That's out of that just doesn't even happen anymore. I mean, I'd love to live in the la la land to where I could just spend money. I'm just going to spend money. And if I need more money, I'm just going to make it.
Todd,
That wouldn't work. That would end very badly, wouldn't it? Can you imagine if we just made our own money? That wouldn't be good. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I'm just saying it would be nice in the land of la la. I would like to just spend money and not have any kind of fiscal responsibility on it.
Chris, what were you going to say?
Todd you just solved the housing affordability issue, and you don't even realize it. If you
let
can't
me be
afford
in
it, don't
charge.
buy it. If you can't afford it, don't buy it.
Let me be in charge.
Don't buy $1 million house. Buy a $500,000 house. It's much more affordable. And if
How about
nobody's
just
buying the $1
let
million
the people
houses,
figure it
they'll
out?
come down.
How about just let the people figure it out? Let the people figure it out.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? Hey, the bank lent me the money. That was bad on their part.
Yep.
Oh, goodness. Okay, I'm going to move on. I do want to just going to talk about this question. If you are specifically looking for certain areas to have help, we can do that. So please send us
Help?
an email. Yeah, help.
Oh, I thought you were talking to me. There for a minute, I thought you said I needed help.
No, this viewer is asking for some help in the Jacksonville area, and we're happy to do that. So we can actually link you up with a agent down in that area. So if you could please send us an email at ts@saxrealty.com, we will be happy to help you. I just wanted to address the question at the 11th hour. But let's just get to this question really quick because this was earlier. In the 40s, we beat inflation using price wage freezes and rationing for needed items. Can we do this instead of fixing the banking issue without putting the burden on the middle class?
Middle class is getting hammered.
Mm-hmm.
I think you have to fix the banking issue. I don't think there's any way around it. But I don't know if we're talking about the same banking issue. I mean, you've got, when I think of banking issue, I think of printing money, constantly bailing out banks. So that may be a different banking issue than what you're talking about.
Well, you could give the real estate back to the banks. The government backed all the problem is the government backed most of the loans, so it was very little risk involved for the investors. The banks, I mean, the top banks own most of the mortgage-backed securities. J.P. Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America. I mean, if you look back on their balance sheets, you're going to see that they're big investors. Some of them, 40% of their investments have been mortgage-backed securities. And they're giving out, they gave out all these low loans, these low-priced loans. I mean, it's not just the federal government. So they they guaranteed the loans, a lot of these loans, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And so the issue is, who gets the houses when people can't afford to pay for them? How do we absorb the losses? And that I don't think they're willing to let happen. That's where I think, we'll start the money printing and we'll just bail out the banking industry because we encourage them, to lend these loans in the first place. But it just amazes me that we let the asset class go up to a point to where people can't. I mean, you can't. Maybe you can. Can you make employers pay more money? I think what's going to happen, and they're talking about this. I tell you what, I don't even want to talk about this tonight, but there's a video out there that I watched, and it was talking about the guaranteed job or guaranteed wage program that they're proposing that the government kind of puts into place to where they regulate. Not just minimum wage, but, bring a guaranteed job to the market. And I think it becomes really scary when the government owns the businesses, the government will own the houses. We're already seeing in California where they have this Dreamers bill where first-time homebuyers, the government is proposing that the government will give them their deposit, their down payment to buy their house, but they become equity partners when they go to sell the house. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but that's kind of crazy. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, I was reading something about it.
Yeah. All right, let's take a couple more questions before we head out. It's 2 hours into this night, guys. We appreciate you. We love that you spend your Tuesday night with us. I've seen some comments. Somebody said that I need to change my narrative, that I'm all doom and gloom. I'm not trying to be doom and gloom. I'm just trying to say this is where we are. If you guys can really look, if you can look at your situation and you don't see that there are people struggling financially, and you don't see that the housing market is out of whack, and you don't see that the roof over our head is costing us too much money and too much of our paychecks, that we are burdened by these costs, then you are part of the people that are in the top 5% of income earners. So if you're making a comment, if you're watching the channel and you're in the top 5% of income earners, I mean, that's really not a fair comment to say that we're only doom and gloom. We're just talking about stats. If you can look at the chart from NAR, you can look at the Robert Schiller, Yale University, okay, that is, one of the top professors on, macroeconomics, probably in the United States, and can show charts that are factual based on housing affordability of a fair value of housing compared to what people make, the money that they make. And then you can look at that where we're over 130% of that line right now. And you can't say, look, you guys don't have to watch. If you think that this isn't valuable information and that we're not addressing the issue and the crisis that we have for the bulk of Americans that are out there that want to own a home, that want to be able to afford rent. If this isn't something that we should be talking about and addressing, I mean, what do you want me to say about it? Everything is great. Want me to tell you that you should buy now, because if you don't and get yourself into financial debt and put yourself at the brink of despair and bankruptcy, if you don't do that, you're making a big mistake. If you can afford to buy a house, go buy it. I'm talking to the people that are feeling the pressure and they have nobody they're going to agents and they're going to loan officers that are driven by commission-based pay, and they're asking them, it's like asking a lion if you should jump in the den with them. And the lion's hungry. Hey, should I climb in here with you? Maybe I'll just snuggle up in the corner here and fall asleep. I mean, come on, man. We got to be practical.
Mm-hmm. And there's lots of people talking about the affordability. Who are all the people in the U.S. that can afford these expensive homes? They can't all be doctors and engineers. I'm guessing most will sink if one person loses their job, dies, poor health.
Multi-generational households. Just sold a house. I'm not going to give the specifics, but in multi-generational housing, we're seeing where parents are either, if they're really wealthy, are lending their kids money because, they're taking the mortgage out for them because, they have the cash. And we're seeing a lot of people move back in together, where we're seeing, mom and dad, or mom, maybe one's deceased, and they're moving in with the kids and they're offsetting the costs. And you guys seeing that too?
In my market, I'll answer before Chris, because I'm thinking about this, and we kind of we drive around and we're like, geez, how can everybody afford these huge white Chevy Suburbans, and the moms don't really work and they're just driving around in them, and we're amazed by it. But most people here that I find have money and how they can afford all these homes is that they have some type of business. They've done well. One lady I know sells lashes. One lady I know is an esthetician. They all seem to have their own business. They work their butts off, no doubt about it. but they're not, just working a job and going to a 9 to 5. They're figuring out ways to have multiple streams of income. And I mean, like I said earlier in the conversation, is that Gilbert has the highest median income of Arizona, and it's you could definitely tell, but it's, from what I see, mostly people with businesses. So that's been my experience with him.
Yeah, and people are working 2 and 3 jobs.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, that's like you said, they've got their side hustle going on. I mean, that's what you have to do.
Yeah. Keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah, pay, or at least pay their debt that they signed up for.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have any closing comments you want to say? And what kind of, did we get all the super chats out?
Oh, let's just cruise through there really quick.
Make sure.
Bear
Guys,
with
we
me.
appreciate you, like I said, spending your Tuesday evenings with us. If we can help you in any way, you could shoot us an email. If you'd like to reach out to our agents that are sharing the screen, their information is in the show notes. Like I said, they have YouTube channels as well. You can learn all about their areas. They actually have great videos, great content, about their specific markets. And so check them out, subscribe to them. And
Yeah, and specifically talking about in this super chat, Teddy, thank you so much. This is talking about York County in Pennsylvania. Please reach out to us. Just as I had mentioned previously, the TS at Sachs Realty, we can connect you with a real estate agent that knows that specific market, and we'd be happy to help you. So that is for that one. And
yeah, we do have a lot of people from Maryland jump across the state line. We're close to Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And I think one of the things that I hear the most, and I don't know a whole lot about the market, but one of the things that I hear is that the taxes are really high. Mm-hmm. So,
yep, we do have one more super
but we
chat.
do have people up there that we could point you to.
Yes,
Sure.
absolutely. Charles, thank you so much. Banks, closing? Okay. Banks are closing offices. U.S. Banks is closing 64. I think even J.P. Morgan is closing some. The CEO of J.P. is selling stocks.
I mean, have you been to the branch of your bank lately? I mean, it's kind of, crazy. Now they're trying to sell me products whenever I don't go often, but if I do go, they're like, hey, can we tell you about the CD? Can we tell you about this? Can we tell you about, I mean, they need money. They're asking for money. They want, it's like they have these quotas. They have to ask everybody for, the opportunity to take their money and and put it in the bank for with a CD, an interest-bearing CD. But these branches are dead. I mean, there's nobody in them. There's 0 clients. You're looking at these expensive brick and mortars and you're going, this doesn't make sense. I mean, you could take a picture of your check now and deposit it in your account. You don't even need to go to the branch. Everybody, or mostly everybody, banks online. But yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is these banks are, they can't be in good shape. Mm-mm. They can't be in good shape.
Yeah.
And I think we'll like I said, time will tell. We are coming down, guys. I believe, regardless of whether you think that, I'm on track or somebody else is on track, whoever's on track, time is the tell all. We are getting close to the period of time where all of this is going to show one way or another. We're going to see prices continue to rise, or prices fall, or prices flatten out. And it's all going to show its head here in the next probably 12 to 15 months. So mark your calendars and follow us every Tuesday night, and we'll play it out. We'll see how it goes.
Sounds like a plan to me.
All right, Ryan, any final words of wisdom?
No, it's getting cold where you guys are at, so come on down to Arizona. If you, I have a nice video on my Airbnb if you guys want to check that out on my channel where I tour it in the super nice community I live in. So feel free. You guys are all welcome. Come on down, and you too,
right.
Todd, Melissa, and Chris. Come on. I don't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right,
Thanks.
we'll come down. We'll have a party that all your neighbors will remember.
I got the yard for it, so we can make it happen. I'll heat the pool up.
We'll make you get a letter by your HOA. We'll help them to wish that they didn't have short-term rentals in the neighborhood, or at least have Todd, Melissa, and Chris down there partying it up. So, Chris, how about you, man? Any final words of wisdom?
And I was just going to say one of the things, and I've been seeing this a lot over the last 3 or 4 years with networking, is you gotta not be afraid to ask questions and get answers. You can't figure out everything on your own. So people that are asking about other markets and things, find people that are professionals. Rely on their advice. Get second opinions. Get third opinions. But you can't necessarily figure out everything on your own. Find somebody that you can trust and ask them, regardless of what market you're in or what investment you're in. So,
yeah,
that's it.
Good advice, guys. Joe, do we have any? Did the poll close? Did you close the poll, or we still have the poll open? All right, let's see what everybody said, because one of the things, and you just said, Chris, talk to a professional, and what I was glad to hear is that people didn't think that was bad advice. That was the lowest on the list. To use a realtor, that's not bad advice. That's good. Mm-hmm. We know that we have our place. We do a lot of above and beyond work out there to help people, and there we go. So how many we got? 829 votes. Still at the top of the list. Bad advice is wait for further price reduction. So there you go. Mm-hmm. There you have it. You guys have spoken. Mm-hmm. Go out and buy your houses. And just don't buy with adjustable rates, because 32% of you said that's bad. And then the flip side, about 30% of you said that it's bad advice to buy now. So hopefully that is, for the sensible, minds out there, the people that are feeling the financial crunch, the financial pain. And it looks like JL 1245 says we still love realtors. So we're glad. We thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ryan. This was great. Really appreciate you and giving us your time. And again, all our viewers, thank you. Always so grateful for you.
Yeah, and go back and check out that Mike Maloney. He had some great insight. Of course, he's a gold guy, and he believes, you should have physical gold. And but anyway, he's got some great insight. It was a really cool Tuesday night podcast. You can check it out. And guys, if you like the video, you got some value out of it, you can let us all know, that's sharing the screen, and Joe included, that you did by hitting that thumbs up, and let us know. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, consider doing so now, and hit that alert bell. You'll know every time we upload content, which currently we're getting ready to add Mondays to our posting. Right now we're posting our Tuesday Night Live, our Thursday night Q&A, our Saturday release, which has a tendency to be a little bit of longer form, not so long as the Tuesday night, podcast here. And we're going to be stepping up our audio too. We've taken a little back seat to the audio. If you guys are listening, a lot of people say these Tuesday night podcasts are too long. That they wish that they weren't 2 hours and 20 minutes long. But that becomes a very a good help to you getting through your workout if you're on the elliptical or making those drives back to the office. We are on Stitcher, Spotify, Pandora, Apple, Google Podcasts. We are going to be uploading more of the audio streams to there. We've slacked off on that because just keeping up on all this stuff on social media is just...
I didn't realize I was getting this famous tonight, but that's great.
Man,
just wait.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Everybody in Phoenix is going to recognize you now.
Yes, you will be stopped,
That's
just
right.
like Todd.
Yeah,
Or they'll
everybody's
know that
going
voice.
to... We promise we won't cut you out of the video even when it's on an audio stream.
I know, right?
We'll
Thank
still
you.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you. Thank you for being on with us tonight. And until next week, guys, we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Peace.